Welcome to my class. And in today's class, we're almost coming to an end of the index numbers. In the last, we were doing the Human Development Index. And in today's class, we're going to talk about inflation and index numbers. Alright, so actually how the rate of inflation is determined, that's with the WPI Wholesale Price Index. That I'm going to explain, and how it's with the index numbers that we come to know about the level of inflation, and based on that the policies are made in the country. So let me just tell you about this. So again, so this is what we'll be doing. Inflation. What is inflation? Continuous rise in prices is known as inflation. And how do you calculate the rate of inflation? So xt minus 1 upon xt minus 1 into 100. So xt is the last week, the last week, that means week 2 minus the previous, t minus 1 is the previous week, divided by the previous week into 100, and you will get the rate of inflation therein. Okay, and this is how we work it out. So inflation, again, let me say, is what it is. It is a situation of a continuous rise in the general price level, and that goes on for a long period of time. Okay, so that is what is inflation. And we measure inflation in terms of wholesale price index. So a consistent rise in the wholesale price index over time shows a situation of inflation. So what does that imply? If the prices are increasing, what does it show? It shows that the value of money is being shaved off, erosion. So there's a continuous fall in the value of money, or the purchasing power of money. So the value of money reduces as the prices increase in the economy, or as the prices of goods increase. For example, if we say that the wholesale price index, if it rises by 100%, then what will happen to the value of money? So it reduces by half. Obviously, double the price level, we have half the purchasing power of a rupee. So especially if the money income of the people remain constant, so suppose if there's a 10% increase in price level, so what does it indicate? That there will be a 10% decrease in purchasing power of the people. So the purchasing of the people gets eroded if there is inflation in the economy, with their money income remaining the same. Of course, if your money income also increases, then it is not such a bad situation. Now, so often we find that we have these workers who go on a protest. They tell the government, or they plead with the government to increase their dearness allowances, which helps to make good the loss of purchasing power during periods of inflation. So I'm going to ask you a question. Suppose if there's a fall in the rate of inflation, does that mean that there's a fall in the price level? No, of course not. So there is a clear distinction between inflation and the rate of inflation. Now, inflation is measured as a percentage increase in the general price level. Alright, like from 100 in say 2019 to 120 in 2020. What does it imply? That if it's 120, it implies a 20% increase in the price level during the period of 1 year. Now, while prices tend to increase during the year, that may not be rising at the same pace or at the same rate, as we call it, every week within a year. So this is a weekly, like, rate of inflation. As I wrote this, it's a weekly calculation of the rate of inflation that is takes place. So this talks about the rate of inflation on a weekly basis. That is the last week, the given week minus the previous week divided by the previous week into 100. So week 1. So week 2 minus week 1 divided upon week 1 into 100. That's how the rate of inflation is calculated. And then you, for the entire year, then you calculate it thereby. Okay. So that is the here we should understand, this is the distinction between inflation and the rate of inflation. So inflation is measured as a percentage increase in the general price level, okay, and the rate of inflation is, it shows the relative change in price index from week to week. That measures the rate of inflation. Okay, so this is by the wholesale price index. So within a year itself, the rate of inflation may fluctuate, it may increase or decrease. So that only implies that there's an increase or decrease in the rate of inflation or in the speed of inflation. But that's not a fall in the price level. So that should be kept in mind when we do this. So inflation is measured in terms of change in the wholesale price index based on weekly quotations of wholesale prices. Now, increase in wholesale price index over a long period of time implies a situation of inflation. Now, this causes an erosion of the purchasing power of money. That means the value of money gets eroded, or it comes down. The value of money comes down. So when there is a situation of inflation, the trade unions often ask for higher money wages so that they are compensated for the fall in the purchasing power of the rupee. So that is all about inflation. So, and that is why index number is so important in economics. Why do you think we need the use of index numbers? So then we see that it is because of this, because it measures inflation. So wholesale price index, consumer price index, and industrial production index, all these are widely used in policy making by the government. So consumer price index or the cost of living index numbers, they help in the negotiation of wages. They also help in the formulation of income policy. It also helps in the price policy of the government or the rent control by the government. Also, the general economic policy formulations are based on the consumer or the cost of living index numbers. Also, taxation. And basically WPI, the WPI, as you see there are types of inflation that I'm talking about now. For example, we just talked about consumer price index, how it helps in making policy, government policies. Now, how wholesale price index calculates the rate of inflation, as you see. So then you have, it is used to, wholesale price index is used to eliminate the effect of changes in price on aggregates such as national income, capital formation. And basically, as I said, wholesale price index is used to measure rate of inflation, right? So that is there. And inflation, as we know, is general and continuing increase in prices. And if inflation becomes sufficiently large, money may lose its traditional function. I mean, of course, it won't, not the traditional function, but it loses its value of money. It lowers the value of money. So we just talked about this, and then index of industrial production, as we see. What is this? It gives us a quantitative figure about the change in production in the industrial sector. Then you have the agricultural production index, as we saw. So it provides a ready reckoner. It just shows that quickly. Ready reckoner means you can find out immediately the performance of the agricultural sector. Then Sensex also is what? It's a useful guide for investors in the stock market. Now if the Sensex is rising, investors are optimistic about the future performance of the economy, right? So then they are ready for investment. It's time for investment for them, etc. So where do we so once again, our question is, where do you get these index numbers from? So what are these the most widely used index numbers? So they are CPI, Consumer Price Index, the Wholesale Price Index. Okay. Then you can also say the yield for principal crops. That comes under the agricultural production index. Now index for industrial production. Then index of foreign exchange, foreign trade. And all of these are available in what is known as the economic survey. So where can you find these indices? In economic survey, which comes out every year, especially just before the budget. So before the budget, so the economic survey is made, in which all these indices are given. So now we have done all of this. We've estimated, if you just listen to my previous class, in my previous classes, we have estimated index number, say simple index, the weighted index, the consumer price, the wholesale price, and all of that. Now, this enables you to calculate a single measure. So why is it so important? Why is estimating index number so important? Now, the reason is it enables you to calculate a single measure of change of a large number of items, because you can calculate index number for prices, quantity, volume, etc. However, it is very important that the index number should be interpreted carefully. The items to be included and the choice of the base period are very important. Now, if I say, let's just take the choice of, can anyone take the base as 1919 or 1920 and 21? No, we cannot, right? Because of the pandemic that we've had. So one has to be very careful about selecting, and in which areas. Maybe no. So that has to be done very carefully. So the choices, again I'm going to repeat myself, that the choice of the base period is very important, and what items have to be included, very important if you want to make a certain policy. And index numbers are extremely important in policy making, as we've just discussed, and it is evident by the various uses that we've just discussed. Alright, so I think with that we come to an end, that the index numbers are indispensable in economic policy making, and they are, what a recap. Just can you tell me? Yes, it is a statistical device for measuring relative changes in a large number of items over a period of time, and especially two periods, base year period and the current period. So in order to know where you stand. And there are some limitations of index numbers that I think we have already discussed, but just as a recap, that generally index numbers are based on samples. So we really can't take into account each and every item in the construction of the index. So that is one limitation of index numbers. And of course, it's difficult to take into account the quality of the products. And in modern times, the qualities of products are fast changing. And these changes are not reflected in index numbers. So especially if you see the electronic items, they are just, the quality just changes overnight. I mean, with so many inventions down the line. And then again, one big limitation, it's not really possible to construct a perfect index number, because there are several methods to construct index numbers, and each of these methods give different results. So there is no one formula of index number that can measure the change in price or quantity with perfection. So that has to be kept in mind. And of course, index numbers can be manipulated, and one can construct index numbers in such a manner that the desired results can be obtained. And especially such manipulation can be done by selecting a particular base year, a particular group of commodities, a specific set of prices. And gullible people like us perhaps might agree to that, because we are not experts in the field. So one should be careful about it. And with that, we come to the end of Unit 3.